Hello Unigame fans, it's no secret that I love monster taming games, but then I realized that I've made many videos covering upcoming games in the genre without making a list of the best that you can play right now. Being an indie games channel, I do want to showcase games from smaller teams, but do have to give props where it's due to bigger games and franchises, excluding the obvious Pokemon games, which is the juggernaut in the space. These are all personal favourites, where I've not spent enough time with series like Yokai Watch, Shin Megami Tensei, and even modern Digimon games, so those are excluded, but caveats aside, let's dive in. Let's begin with this Creatures, a smaller monster taming title that looks so wonderfully retro. It does have elements of Monster Rancher in that the creatures are summoned and copied via discs, but there's no need to dig up your old CDs in order to play this. I love the look and pixel art, really reminding me of early Pokemon games, and is different in terms of mechanics and structure. For example, battles are 3v3, much like an entry that you will see later on, but with 200 creatures to collect and a decent combat system, this is worth a look.
Welcome to Crown Island. Here, dangerous monsters roam free. In a world where ancient evil forces are threatening to return, you must tame and breed the strongest monsters in order to stop the return of the tyrannical Philosopher Kings.
There are a number of early access games on this list, and while I usually exclude those from videos like this, a number of them have already proven themselves and only lack content, case in point being Monster Crown. The main gimmick here is the true crossbreeding system, where the offspring do actually take on the physical characteristics of the parents, as well as their skills and abilities, resulting in quite the large number of possible outcomes. Since the early access launch in July last year, the developers have been steadily putting out updates, just releasing Content Pack 10 at the start of this month, so about a month and change in between updates on average, which is not too bad. According to the developers, the next few patches will be focused on adding more monsters and completing the late game story related content, so it's getting close to completion with an expected price increase once it hits 1.0, so perhaps get in early if you can.
Why did you set out on this journey in the first place?
It's my mom. I have to save her.
Look at this place. It's amazing.
So this is your world.
That's right, a whole nother world. Let's be off, shall we?
Our first bigger game is Ni no Kuni Wrath of the White Witch Remastered, a must-play in the genre due to the gorgeous hand-drawn art and cutscenes, where, instead of merely being Ghibli-inspired, was actually worked on by the legendary animation studio. Play as a young boy on a quest to save his mother, adventure in a fantasy world with your companions as you go on an epic quest. The monsters here are named familiars, with a surprising number of 300 plus of them, although that does include evolutions and various forms. I remember one of the main characters having a strong Welsh accent, which is very unique, but a wonderfully charming game that is not to be missed. The original did release on the PS3 in 2013, so it has been a while, although it did get a remaster for PC, PS4 and Switch in 2019. Psych! I told you that no Pokemon games are on this list, but lo and behold, I do think that Pokemon Uranium is worth a play. However, rather than being made by Game Freak, this is a very impressive fan game, so I think that kind of counts, adding over 150 new Pokemon and taking place in the new Tendor region, complete with its own gym leaders, cities, story and more. Most interestingly, it adds a new nuclear-type Pokemon, where both pure, naturally occurring nuclear Pokemon, as well as corrupted nuclear versions of existing Pokemon exist, adding another dimension to the combat and factoring into the story as well. On top of these, it does also have a built-in randomizer and Nuzlocke modes and more tweaks and features, nailing what fans want to see in a Pokemon game, which makes it get its spot. It did get a cease and desist from Nintendo, as is the fate of most fan games, but the internet is wide and deep, so if you know where to look, I'm sure that you'll be able to get your hands on this. If you love the picks so far or did not expect to see this game, smack the like button and subscribe for more indie gaming goodness. No list talking about monster taming games will be complete without mentioning the Siralim series, where its latest and 4th entry is Ultimate, being the entry of choice if you're new to the series. Yes, while it's still in early access, it essentially combines the features and monsters from the first 3 games into one package and adds even more on top of that. However, unlike most other entries on this list, there isn't really a strong story element in this, instead having procedurally generated worlds, randomized quest objectives, and even adding a base building element, focusing more on the endgame content and does seem to be built as a title with infinite replayability. The combat system is similar to Dragon Warrior Monsters but is 6-on-6, where team composition is critical if you want to succeed. Of the titles on this list, it is perhaps the one with the most min-maxing to do, so if you're into stats and breeding and getting the absolute best monsters, this is the title for you. Speaking of which, Dragon Warrior Monsters or Dragon Quest Monsters was one of my earliest exposure to the monster taming genre, where you could befriend monsters from the Dragon Quest series, having them fight on your side as compared to slaughtering them in the mainline games. The first 2 entries on the Game Boy Color was where I started, where I fell in love with the sheer variety of monster designs, not to mention a breeding system that resulted in stronger and stronger offspring. I do think that one of gaming's biggest crimes is that the more modern Dragon Quest monster games, such as Joker 3 for the 3DS in 2016, was released in Japanese only, but this spin-off series has not seen much love from the publisher. If by any chance, someone from Square Enix is watching this, please consider translating and porting it to modern platforms, or hell, make a new one for the Switch 2 or whatever in the years to come. An impressive series that made the jump from mobile to PC and consoles is Nexomon Extinction, the sequel to the previously mobile-only Nexomon, having a whopping 381 Nexomons to catch and evolve. Playing as an orphan who gets a Nexomon and leaves on a grand adventure, battle other trainers and take on Tyrant Nexomon in this game. It's a fairly straightforward one of these, but does swap out the PP system from Pokemon with a stamina system, but as a fan of this genre and for how great this looks, it gets a great spot on the list. A title that has been quietly chugging along in early access is the adorable Ooblets, a monster taming game crossed with a farming sim, where as a fan of both of these, of course I'm down. You grow ooblets from seeds, where each ooblet design has 3 different rarities, which correspond to different color schemes, and there is an in-game mechanic to get a miniature model of said ooblet to display in the city hall. It's so cute to the extent of vomiting rainbows, where I do understand if the writing and terminology used is not for you, but it's a whimsical title that I really like. There isn't traditional combat per se, where the ooblets face off in dance battles instead, using deck building mechanics, but early access has been smooth so far, recently celebrating 1 year in the program, and I believe we are creeping up on the 1.0 launch as well. Ever since Temtem cropped up on the radar, it had the attention of many, promising a Pokemon MMO with all the features that fans wanted and Nintendo was unable to deliver. So it was no surprise when its Kickstarter campaign raised 8 times its target at a final value of $573,000. I remember the servers getting hammered at launch, so that was a good sign, and congestion has eased, so it's a lot easier to log in. Since the early access launch in January last year, the developers have been busy at work, adding more TAMs, regions, and MMO-like features like guild support, player housing, and weekly tournaments. Combat is a highlight, focusing on 2v2 battles with a stamina instead of PP system, so team composition and ability synergies are even more important here. There should be one more major island to be added before the endgame island and 1.0 launch, impressing so far in early access, so I've no doubt that this will be the experience that people want from such a game.
Do you remember it at all? This land we call Grimoire? The vast fields, the icy ravines? But now, a sinister wind rises as the world of Grimoire falls into darkness. And so we must fight, together, to protect that light, to save Grimoire.
One of the most impressive monster taming entries of all time is World of Final Fantasy, a game that is part of the legendary franchise and brings together characters and enemies across all the games, making it an even better experience for long-time fans of the series. While you're playing as two original characters in this game who are siblings, you do encounter characters from all of Final Fantasy's past, so Terra, Cloud, Tifa, Squall, Yuna, Lightning, and Noctis from FF6 to 15, all the way back to Cecile, and even Warrior of Light from Final Fantasy 1. Similarly, on the creature front, you have Chocobos, Malboros, Ifrit, Shiva, Behemoth, Muggles, Cactuars, and more, but the chibi versions are just the best and is actually cleverly used in combat. Small chibi characters can ride on or sit on the heads of normal sized characters, where this stack of units has to be optimized for combat success. As both a game that pushes the genre forward in terms of mechanics and being a greatest hits of Final Fantasy, this gets a high spot on the list. I love the monster taming Metroidvania, Monster Sanctuary from 2020, combining two of my favourite genres and has a pixel art look, so of course I was down for it. Instead of the overworld exploration that we're used to, this is a side-scrolling platformer instead, where certain areas have to be accessed by using your monster's abilities like digging, gliding, or swimming. Combat is 3v3, where interestingly, each individual monster has a full-on skill tree. Post-launch, the developers have added endgame content in Legendary Keepers to Battle, New Game Plus, support for PvP seasons, and the usual balancing changes, and it's a game that I adore, taking the #1 spot. For a look at upcoming monster taming games, watch these videos and I will see you after the jump.